rolling tight, can you see it? Streaming the truth live from where they decree it. Sylvia speaks, no filter, no buffer. Courtroom drama couldn't get any tougher.
When the gavel's first bang, to the witness stands tears. Sylvia's lens captures all your hopes and fears. Uploading justice one trial at a time. Tune in every moment, edges sublime.
Welcome to the Sylvia show, oh yeah. She's got the inside scoop, don't you care? With every verdict, the suspense does grow. So hit subscribe, let's start the show. Welcome to the Sylvia show, oh yeah. She's got the inside scoop, don't you care? With every verdict, the suspense does grow. So hit subscribe, let's start the show. Faces tell stories, the courtroom can't hide. Sylvia's insights cut through the divide. From jury talks to the lawyer's secret. In Sylvia's world, you know you'll need it. Behind the scenes where whispers are loud, her lens reveals the truth in the crowd. Courtroom secrets laid bare to see. Stay curious with Sylvia Spree. Every objection, every sharp retort, Sylvia's there to give you the report. Exclusive footage no one else can snag. From catchy headlines straight to the tag. Welcome to the Sylvia show, oh yeah. She's got the inside scoop, don't you care? With every verdict, the suspense does grow. So hit subscribe, let's start the show. Welcome to the Sylvia show, oh yeah. She's got the inside scoop, don't you care? With every verdict, the suspense does grow. So hit subscribe, let's start the show.
Faces tell.
Good evening, everybody. This is Sylvia, infamous Sylvia. I am here tonight to do a reenactment of the day one. I am here to do a reenactment of day one of the U.S. versus U.S. versus Lil Durk. So everyone knows him as Lil Durk. But one of my actresses has an emergency, so she will not be on right now with us. But I do have one of my actors. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I am fine. I am fine. All right, so we're going to reenact day one of the Lil Durk trial. So what happens is we're going to do this behind what's happening at court, so you guys will get a chance to get a feel of what actually went on word for word from the courtroom. All right, you guys ready? Are you guys ready? Not you. I'm talking to the people. Are the people ready? The people. Are the people ready yet? All right, let me just go ahead and get myself settled and get ready to start. But in the meantime, we will have a little get ready music. Hold on.
She got the cam rolling tight, can you see it? Streaming the truth live from where they decree it. Sylvia speaks, no filter, no buffer. Courtroom drama couldn't get any tougher.
When the gavel's first bang, to the witness stands tears.
Okay, I am ready. You guys ready? Chat, can I get a 1 if you guys ready? The people's ready. Okay, troll, the people's ready. All right. I will begin. Central District of California, Western District, the Honorable Michael W. Fitzgerald, U.S. District Court. United States of America, plaintiff versus DeAndre Dontrell Wilson, David Brian Lindsay, and Durk Banks. Case number 224 CR 621 MWF. Let us begin. The judge.
Okay. Good morning, Counsel, Special Agent, gentlemen, Ms. Robinson, and members of the public who are here. Two issues. One is that, very regrettably, I got a phone call from the husband of juror number 6, who was in a severe car accident late last night and she was currently undergoing surgery. I therefore asked him if, after expressing my regrets to her to hear that and all of our best wishes for her recovery, whether his request was that she be excused as opposed to delaying the trial. And not surprisingly, he said that he was calling to let us know that and to ask that she be excused. So that is my intention. Obviously, while of course, we all hope that it would be a successful operation. We have no idea when she would be able to return to court or be in sufficient health to focus on this trial. Any objections to excusing juror number 6 and replacing juror number 6 with alternate number 1?
No, Your Honor. No, not on behalf of Mr. Banks, Your Honor.
All right.
Not on behalf of Mr. Wilson, Your Honor. None on behalf of Mr. Lindsay, Your Honor.
Then we will proceed in that fashion. The next issue is what was raised last night. We, in regard to Exhibit 124, I unfortunately was not able to open the exhibit with what I had last night, but I have reviewed it this morning. Let me ask the government, when was Exhibit 124 extracted?
Your Honor, meaning when did we seize it from or extract it from the overall digital device?
Correct. When did the government have access to Exhibit 124, whether the government reviewed it or not? I mean, not that you had the device, but when was it in a readable form for the government?
Readable form. It's part of the text thread. We identified it less than, I think 2 weeks ago. We provided to the defense once we identified it around.
All right, so when was that?
When did we? I believe it was provided it to the defense on the weekend before the pretrial conference. Your Honor, before the defense had provided us exhibits.
There were two issues raised in the email last night. The first was whether this should be used in opening statement. The government's represented that the video portion of it won't be used. The second is overall dissatisfaction with how the exhibits are being identified here. And that is something we can't decide right now. But what is, if in fact this was provided when the government said, and it does seem to fall within the parameters that I have established in both of the pretrial orders, what is the defense's argument for keeping it out of the opening statement?
Just to be clear, Your Honor, this was available for the government and to the government for months and months and months.
Okay, it was, as that might be. We can dispute that later. But right now, it was then provided to you earlier. So for right now, what is the basis, other than delay in providing it, which I understand, is what other arguments are for keeping, either making it not admissible or not using it in opening statement?
It would be the delay in disclosure. On August 15th, then they provided to us. They told us, given the materiality of the exhibit, they were going to file a motion. And then they told us they were going to raise it at the pretrial conference. We were expecting it to flesh it out then. We didn't. We did not. So it was off the table in our mind. We have not reviewed it and discussed it with Mr. Banks.
In no way is this a to prejudice the government from actually admitting it. My guess is that ultimately it will be admitted. But because this dispute has been raised, I will ask the government not to use it in the opening statement. In regard to the opening statements, it's an hour and 15 minutes for the government, it's 25 minutes for each of the defendants. Potentially or collectively, an hour and 15 minutes, obviously for the defense. How does the defense intend to divide up the time if there has been an agreement? If there hasn't been, which I understand, then it would be 25 minutes per defendant. So Ms. Goldberg responds and says, Your Honor, we've spoken. I believe on behalf of Mr. Banks, we have been allotted slightly more time than the other two co-defendants. I don't, in the court, which makes sense. So how much time is that? Ms. Goldberg, I don't believe I'm going to need the whole time. I believe I'll use about 30 minutes or so. I have spoken with co-defendants' counsel, and they've all agreed that that's acceptable to them. The court? All right. So then, I'll divide whatever time remains after you are finished to between counsel for Mr. Wilson and counsel for Mr. Lindsay. Who is going to be delivering the opening statement on behalf of the government?
Mr. Weiner answers, I am, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Weiner. Like I said, you will have an hour and 15 minutes. If you are going to take around 30 minutes, Ms. Goldberg, then what I would do is have the break be between those at the end of your argument, and then we will go forward with the next two. And then we'll stretch after that is done. And the government should be prepared to call its first witness then.
Mr. Hallberg replies, Your Honor, if I could just be heard, the only issue is swapping out tech between the defendant's counsel. So in terms of our presentation, so I'm hoping we can take a break to set up my tech.
No, because every time there is a break, when you have this many jurors, we will sit here a while. That should be pretty seamless thing. And you aren't going to have a break between every cross-examination. You've got to get this worked out. But like I said, we will stand and stretch, and you'll be able to switch out the tech between Mr. Wilson and Mr. Lindsay and proceed. But we aren't going to, if you mean by a quote-unquote break, that we are going to stop, let everybody leave, have everybody come back, then that is certainly not going to happen.
No, Your Honor. That's not what I meant.
Miss Sanchez, are all of the jurors here?
We are missing one, Your Honor.
All right, that is typical, unfortunately, on the first day of trial. I certainly hope to avoid it in future and to let counsel know I was prepared. I would have been ready a lot earlier than that because I had to come in to read Exhibit 124, but I will, just if you raise something with me, then presume we'll be starting at 8:15 in the future. All right? Yes, Mr. Mills.
Mr. Mills says, Your Honor, briefly, I had spoken to the government today, this morning, and they had indicated that they plan on to use Exhibit 217, 217A. You had previously ruled on our motion in limine that it was excluded as to Mr. Lindsay for the time being. We wonder how that would be handled regarding a limiting instruction or anything along those lines.
Do you have anything to propose to me? But what I would say, as I've told you, that some evidence is only coming in for one person. And is it being used in the opening statement or?
Mr. Mills responds, "It is being used in opening statement, Your Honor." Mr. Weiner says, "Your Honor, it is being used. Yes, Your Honor. I spoke with, and what we spoke with Mr. Mills about earlier is I believe when we showed it that what will be told to the jury will obviate the need for the limiting instruction."
All right, then we'll wait and see if that is what occurs. I hope so. All right, everyone is now here, so let's get going. Ms. Sanchez, would you please bring in the jury?
Yes, Your Honor. Miss O'Connor says, "Your Honor, briefly, Mr. Steele's law clerk, Annie Bile, is here and wanted to ask the court permission for her to sit behind Mr. Steele."
Ms. Bly, you may sit behind Mr. Steele.
Miss Bly says, "Thank you, Your Honor."
Ms. Bly, are you a member of the bar yet, or are you still studying?
"I'm not even in law school."
Okay. Well, I'm sure you are being very, very useful to Mr. Steele and Mr. Banks.
"Your Honor," Mr. O'Connor, Miss O'Connor, "Your Honor, may I approach with some impeachment binder while we are waiting, or should I just do that after?"
The jury's not in yet. You can approach. Well, Miss Sanchez isn't here. Why don't you wait a minute?
Okay, sounds good. Upon the jury entering the courtroom,
Good morning, members of the jury. I hope you enjoyed our hot weekend. The air conditioning in this courthouse, which opened in 2015, is excellent, so at least you don't have to worry about that. As I see that alternate number 1 has anticipated, regrettably, juror number 6 will be unable to proceed with us for the trial for reasons beyond her control, and therefore alternate number 1 is now juror number 6. And the alternates will all move up one number, and we'll reseat you later on if that is appropriate. We will now start the trial with the opening statements. I mentioned those on Friday. The opening statements are not evidence, but no doubt you will find them useful because the evidence, of course, comes in witness by witness, exhibit by exhibit, direct examination, cross-examination. So the purpose of the opening statements is to give a roadmap or an overview as to what the witness is going to be. But as I said, despite the skill and good faith of the lawyers, it might be that somebody mentions something for which there is later no evidence in trial, or so it seems to you. For all things relating to the evidence, it's entirely your decision and judgment, but if that should prove to be the case, then of course your own decisions as to what is in the real evidence, the exhibits, and the testimony will control. In the trial, the government's going to go first. Nothing special about that. Somebody has to go first, and the rule in all American courts is that the party who bears the burden of proof goes first. And of course, in a criminal case, that is the government, since the burden of proof is entirely on the government. And the defendants have pled not guilty, are not required to do anything, including giving opening statements, although my understanding is here that they are choosing to do so and will do so after the government. With that, the government may commence its opening statement.
Mr. Weiner says, "Thank you, Your Honor. Can we see that on our screen?" "Great. Okay. May I proceed, Your Honor?"
You may.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. This is a case about revenge, stalking, and premeditated murder. This is a case about the death of a 24-year-old Saviay'a Robinson at the hands of these defendants and their co-conspirators. On a summer day in August 2022, Saviay'a Robinson and some of his friends, including the rapper Taekwon Bowman, who you will hear referred to throughout this trial by his nickname Quando Rondo. It's going to be a name you hear throughout this trial a lot. We're visiting Los Angeles. What you will learn in this trial is that Quando Rondo was a rival of a defendant, Durk Banks, who is also known by the name Lil Durk. What Quando Rondo and Saviay'a Robinson didn't know was that they were being followed, that these defendants and their co-conspirators were flown across the country to track, stalk, hunt, and kill Quando Rondo. What Saviay'a Robinson didn't know, what Quando Rondo didn't know, is that that day would be Saviay'a Robinson's last day on earth. Yes, Saviay'a and Quando left their hotel. You will hear that the defendants and the co-conspirators who had flown in the day before stalking them using 2 cars. Stalked them while they slept. Stalked them while they shopped. And for 2 days tracked and stalked them as they drove around Los Angeles in that black Escalade, waiting for their opportunity to ambush. You will hear that when Quando and Saviay'a were at their most vulnerable at the gas station at around 5:30 p.m. on Friday during rush hour at a busy gas station across from Beverly Center, the conspirators decided it was time to strike. 3 mass shooters came down an alley, including defendant Lindsay in the front, who you will learn was the man circled in red right there, and uploaded their firearms towards the car, striking and killing Saviay'a Robinson. You will then learn as the shooters, including defendant Lindsay, fled the scene. Defendant Wilson was right around the corner in a getaway car. And defendant Banks was sitting by the phone waiting for an update if if his hitmen got their guy, killed Quando. What the shooters and the co-conspirators left behind was a dead body, 18 rounds, including multiple expelled from a machine gun. But the question is, why? Why did this happen? For what reason did this occur? Why did Saviay'a Robinson die on that summer day? And the answer is revenge. This is a story of revenge. And in order to understand that story of revenge, I'm going to introduce you to some of the key individual that you will learn throughout this trial that there is a couple of different names. I'll go through them. But they are important to understand the story of revenge. The story of years-long campaigning of stalking and Saviay'a death. So, let's start with defendant Durk Banks. Defendant Banks, also known as Lil Durk, is a prominent musician. He was a member of a group that he formed called Only the Family, or OTF. But this case is not about music. It's about murder. It is about murder. You're going to hear what on that one part OTF was music. Some of its members made music, but a subgroup of OTF was involved in criminality. You will hear about a subgroup OTF were members of the same Chicago gang and formed bonds, got to know each other that way. And I want to talk about an individual who is central to this story. Davon Bennett, who I'm going to refer to as King Von. And that is how you are going to hear him referred to throughout this trial. Now, King Von was a prominent member of the Chicago gang, which you will learn Defendant Banks, Defendant Wilson, and other co-conspirators were also part of. In addition to being a prominent member, King Von was also a member of OTF. You can see his chain right there, OTF, and a very close friend of Defendant Banks. So this is where our story of revenge starts. In November 2020, Quando Rondo and King Von got into an altercation. A member of Quando Rondo's entourage shot and killed King Von. So as of November 2020, King Von was dead. And as I said before, King Von was a prominent OTF member and close friend of Defendant Banks. What followed is that Defendant Banks became consumed with revenge. You're going to hear a couple of different words of revenge in this trial. You're going to hear the term get back or getting back. You're also going to hear the term slide for someone, which you will learn is slang for seeking revenge or getting back. And a term you're going to hear is is slide for Von. Get revenge, get back for Von. And you're going to hear that in public and in private, Defendant Banks expressed his desire to get back for revenge to his fellow OTF members, and that at the same time he was receiving pressure from his fans to slide for Von. So, how did it work? How did OTF and Defendant Banks co-conspirators conspire to slide for Von, to get back, to seek revenge? I want to introduce you to some other key players that you will hear about, and some of who you will hear from in this trial. First, is Casey Hester, who is known as OTF Only the Family Jam. OTF Jam grew up with defendant Banks. And you will hear that, like King Von and defendant Banks and defendant Wilson, OTF Jam was from that same Chicago gang. You will also hear that defendant Banks kept OTF Jams close. You will hear that OTF Jam was a cold-blooded killer. And defendant Bank knew that. And you will learn that defendant Bank kept OTF Jams in the fold. While OTF Jam was in prison for attempted murder, defendant Banks supported him financially by putting money on his books. And when OTF Jam got out of prison, defendant Bank gave him more money to support him. OTF Jam was brought into a fold as a trusted member of OTF. Not because he was a talented rapper, but because he was muscle. Because he could easily deploy to do things like kill Quando Rondo, which is exactly what he did. You will learn that OTF Jam was one of those masked shooters I showed you before. You will see that he, along with defendant Lindsay and another individual who we'll learn later, was one of those men who uploaded their firearms to kill Quando, then flew across the country to kill Quando. Now, OTF Jam has pleaded guilty to this murder. And he also has agreed to cooperate with the government. And so you will hear from him on that stand. And you will learn how he was deployed as a hitman by defendant Banks and that OTF co-conspirators to go get Quando in Los Angeles. Then there is a defendant Wilson. He is also known as OTF Didi, or as he called himself, Threat, or Big Threat. Here is a photo of his Instagram. OTF Didi calling himself the real threat. You will learn that defendant Wilson was also a trusted OTF member, an associate of defendant Banks. And you will learn about his role in this murder. Not only did he fly out to kill Quando Rondo, he recruited 2 of the hitmen, including his associate, defendant Lindsay. You will see text messages showing that recruitment. You will hear that OTF Didi and that defendant Wilson was in one of the stalking cars helping coordinate where Quando was. And then hear the shooters get away. And then there is Kayvon Grant. You will learn that Kayvon Grant was defendant Banks' right-hand man, like his personal assistant. You will hear that he did things for defendant Bank, like go shopping for him, help book transportation, drive him around, and just like OTF, that also had criminal side. So did Grant. You will learn that Kayvon Grant was part of a stolen car ring. And one of his jobs was to procure stolen cars and guns. And that is exactly what he did in this murder. You will learn that defendant Banks' direction. You will learn that at defendant Banks' direction, Kayvon Grant procured the stolen car and the guns to be used in this murder to try to kill Quando and kill Saviay'a Robinson. And just like OTF Jam, Kayvon Grant has pleaded guilty to this murder. And you will learn from him because he agreed to cooperate with the government. He will tell you about flying across the country on a private jet with Defendant Banks as the troops mobilized, as flights were booked for co-conspirators to fly out and kill Quando Rondo. As I said before, Defendant Banks was consumed with getting revenge. His sliding, excuse me, sorry. Sorry. With sliding for Vaughn, you will learn that he used his wealth and used his persuading to put pressure on his OTF co-conspirators to seek that revenge. Thank you. You will even see messages where he threatens to cut off his OTF members financially if they don't get the revenge for him. And you will learn that it wasn't just limited to Quando. That Defendant Banks also used his OTF members to hunt his rivals. You will see messages, for example, this Instagram post that Defendant Banks sent to another rival in Chicago. I got them hunting you up. And that is exactly what he did to Quando Rondo. He had his guys, his OTF guys, hunting them down. And so when opportunities first struck, the co-conspirators took action. You will hear that in May of 2021, Quando Rondo had a concert in rural Georgia, and Defendant Banks and his co-conspirators decided it was time to take shots and get their revenge. You will hear that Defendant Banks and Kayvon Grant and other OTF co-conspirators conspired to go shoot up Quando after the concert in rural Georgia. And that following the concert at a gas station in a city called Blackshear, Georgia, the co-conspirators took their shot, fired multiple rounds at Quando's car, but missed. And you will also see Defendant Bank was tracking just that. In one of his phones, you are going to see images tracking that Quando Rondo had a show in rural Georgia. A news alert right after showing that he was shot. Let's fast forward to November, August 2022. Opportunity strikes again. Defendant Banks and his co-conspirators learned that Quando Rondo is in Los Angeles, and they determined again it is time to get back. They were going to strike in LA while Quando is vulnerable. He's a fish out of water in a city that is not his. And so what the co-conspirators do, you will learn, is as Defendant Banks and Kayvon Grant, his personal assistant, were flying back from Miami on a private jet, Defendant Banks mobilized his troops. You will hear that around that time in the morning of August 18th, flights started getting booked for the OTF members and other hitmen to fly from Chicago to Los Angeles. You will see that Defendant Bank tried to distance himself from that. Here is a text where he says, "Don't book no flight under my name involved with me." As the flights were being booked for these co-conspirators from Chicago to Los Angeles, you will learn that this is not the only time that defendant Banks tried to distance himself and evade law enforcement and hide his criminality. For example, you will see threads in defendant Banks' own words where he says, "Delete the thread and start a new one." You will also learn that the co-conspirator used other methods to attempt to avoid law enforcement, like using encrypted communication. So going back to August 2022, as the troops were mobilizing, people started flying in, but not to Los Angeles again. To avoid law enforcement detection, the co-conspirators fly into San Diego. But Quando is not in San Diego. Quando is in LA. Thank you, lovely lady. Thank you for your super chat. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. So you will learn that the co-conspirators started flying in. That there is OTF jam in the red shoes, right? He shows them his red shoes. The same red shoe that he uses during the murder. Another co-conspirator next to him in green shirt, who you will learn about, who is one of the drivers of the stalking cars. And as I mentioned before, defendant Wilson starts recruiting. He recruits two of his associates, a man named Keith Jones and defendant Lindsay, to come out and seek a reward for killing Quando Rondo, a reward from defendant Banks for killing Quando Rondo. And what you will learn and hear is that these two men flew out with the promise that they are going to be paid. As I said before, this is a case about revenge. But you will also learn that it is a case about reward, because what you will hear is that defendant Lindsay and Keith Jones had nothing to do with Quando Rondo. That was their beef. That is defendant Banks' beef, defendant Wilson's beef, OTF Jam's beef, but it is not their beef. They are friends of defendant Wilson from a different neighborhood in Chicago. They flew out because they were promised money from defendant Banks to get Quando Rondo. Keith Jones is the third shooter, another one of those masked men I showed you earlier. You will learn that he has also pleaded guilty to this murder, and he has agreed to cooperate with the government. And you will hear from him about how on the morning of August 18th that he was sitting home in Chicago, he got a call from defendant Wilson asking him to go to Los Angeles to get money to go kill Quando Rondo. And that is exactly what he did. That is exactly what he did. And you will learn that the frantic nature of that morning, everyone learned that they got their guy. That Quando was vulnerable. He was in Los Angeles. And you will see that the co-conspirators flew out with just the shirts on their back, because they were going there for one purpose. They were going there to kill Quando. There is a surveillance footage from the San Diego airport showing Keith Jones, defendant Wilson, defendant Lindsay, and defendant Wilson on the right-hand side of the screen. You will then hear from the evening of August 18th to the afternoon of August 19th. Over 2 days span, the co-conspirators tracked Quando Rondo, waiting for the opportunity to ambush. When they all come up to San Diego, to Los Angeles, it was late at night. But they thought they would take their shot. You will hear that they went to Quando's hotel and they waited outside. They didn't see Quando, so they did what they went in. I'm sorry. So what they did, they went to a hotel to sleep. And what you will learn is that hotel was paid for by defendant Banks, just like the flights for them to come out, also paid by defendant Banks. In the morning of August 19th, after sleeping at that hotel, they woke up, ready for action. They got into these cars, heavily tinted, one of which you will learn was stolen, had a fake plate that Kayvon Grant obtained in order to evade law enforcement detection, and that from around early in the morning until 5:30 in the afternoon, they followed and followed and waited for the opportunity to kill. You're going to see a lot of surveillance footage. I'm just showing you kind of sample of here. Quando Rondo and Saviay'a Robinson in that black Escalade. The two tinted. One stolen car following them from the hotel to dispensary to the clothing store. Followed, waited, lying in wait. Here is Quando and Saviay'a entering a clothing store in West Hollywood, and the co-conspirators circling the block, waiting. And then they pulled into that gas station. Stolen car pulled into the alley behind. The shooter popped out and uploaded. Here is a video. It doesn't have any sound. Upon the video being played, 5:30 p.m. on Friday afternoon outside the Beverly Center. Here's another angle. You will learn that Saviay'a and Quando were in the black Escalade, and the shooters were going to come around the corner. Upon the video being played, 18 bullets. And as I mentioned before, as the shooters fled, Defendant Wilson was waiting around the corner to get away. And then shortly after the murder, the shooters and the co-conspirators decided to get out of Dodge, go back to Chicago, but not before grabbing a bite to eat. Here's a surveillance footage of the in and out. There is OTF Jam, Defendant Wilson, Defendant Lindsay, Keith Jones. There is Defendant Wilson. There is Defendant Lindsay. And you will see comparison of surveillance footage. Defendant Lindsay in the in and out, wearing the same distinctive shoe that was worn earlier when he killed Saviay'a Robinson. The same with OTF Jam wearing those same distinctive red shoe. Keith Jones wearing his gray shoes. And so as the co-conspirators had their flights booked home, paid for, again, by defendant Banks, they celebrated and had a bite to eat. You will then hear the following: Saviay'a Robinson's death. This is a picture of them heading back from the airport, shirt in their back. Defendant Lindsay, Keith Jones, Defendant Wilson, OTF Jams, and other drivers into the Los Angeles and out of Los Angeles. You will then hear that after the murder, Defendant Banks and his co-conspirators celebrated and mocked and taunted the death of Saviay'a Robinson and the attempt murder of Quando Rondo. In Mimi, in private, they celebrated because they got some get back. But while the co-conspirators were stalking Quando, were tracking him, they were also tracked because, as it turns out, one of those cars, not the stolen one, there is another white car, had a GPS on it. The law enforcement was able to trace the whereabouts that car went. What you are going to learn that was a car driven by Kayvon Banks. Kayvon Grant. Defendant Banks' personal assistant, and that car repeatedly went back and forth to a rental house where Defendant Banks was staying. Remember that Kayvon Grant, Defendant Banks flew back on the morning of August 18th, the same day the shooters came in from Miami on a private jet. And you will hear that Kayvon Grant and that BMW went back and forth to this house, including after they missed their opportunity to get Quando on the 18th. You will also hear that in addition to that GPS data, you're going to see some cell site location data showing the approximate location of all of the co-conspirators who participated in that on-the-ground stalking. And you will see Defendant Wilson and Defendant Lindsay, their phones were traveling following Quando Rondo with OTF Jam, with Kayvon Grant, all throughout Los Angeles, from downtown all the way to the Beverly Center, and then to the In and Out. But the story doesn't end with the murder of Saviay'a Robinson, because at some point, Defendant Banks and his co-conspirator felt that the walls were closing in. You're going to see messages from Defendant Banks talking to his OTF co-conspirators, including Defendant Wilson, with suspicions that OTF Jam was cooperating with the government. This is on August 2023. This is Defendant Banks saying, "Jam, just get ready to snitch, blood. Clear as day. He's gonna tell soon. As long as we don't break, they can tell them whatever." Defendant Banks' own word. And what you will hear is that, as I said before, and what you will learn is that he was right. Defendant Banks was right. OTF Jam was in fact cooperating with the government. And you are going to hear from him today about his relationship with Defendant Bank and Defendant Wilson and his role in this murder. So when the walls had closed, you're going to hear that on October morning of 2024, the FBI executed multiple search warrants at different co-conspirators' homes. And you will learn that just hours after that, Defendant Bank tried to flee the country. He booked multiple flights to get out of the United States, and then you saw the FBI at the private jet terminal. He fled from them and then refused instruction to get out the car. He had known that the walls had closed in. As you sit here and listen throughout this trial, the evidence is going to be clear, and that those shooters that you saw, that those men on the ground in those cars stalked and killed Saviay'a Robinson. That defendant Wilson is in one car, and he helped the guy get away, and he recruited people. That defendant Lindsay was the first guy to hop out the car and rained bullets on Saviay'a Robinson and Quando Rondo. That this murder occurred, and that Saviay'a Robinson died as a result of this conspiracy. But for what and why? You will also be clear. That will also be clear. It's because the defendant Bank revenge. You're going to see messages from defendant Banks saying we staying out of other people's war. They don't hop in ours. It's crazy. They don't slide or hurt MFers. Leaving it up to us. Leaving it up to us. For their crimes, these defendants have been charged with 5 counts, including conspiracy, stalking, result in death, and murder for hire. After you have heard all of the evidence, that why, that for what, that motive is going to be clear. It was defendant Banks' beef. It was defendant Banks' money. It was defendant Banks' hitman. And it was defendant Banks' get back. That is why Saviay'a Robinson died. And so, at the conclusion of this trial, after you've heard and seen and listened to all the evidence, you have another opportunity to get up here again. We have another opportunity to get up here again and speak to you and ask you to come to the only conclusion after seeing what evidence, which is what all these defendants are guilty of all counts.
And the court says, thank you, Mr. Weiner. Ladies and gentlemen, let's stand and stretch for a moment while Mr. Banks' counsel prepares for his opening statement. As I've told you, that is not necessary, but I have been told that Mr. Banks' counsel do intend to make an opening statement. Juror number 4, as I said to you on Friday, feel free to stand and stretch whenever you like. All right? You may be seated. Ms. Goldberg, you may begin when you are ready.
All right, Ms. Goldberg.
So now, Ms. Goldberg. Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning. Everybody knew I took care of Fun. Whatever you saw, I helped him do it. Everything. We were close from birth. That is a statement in a recorded interview with law enforcement. And that statement was made by a man named Kayvon Grant. You just heard about him in the government's opening statement. And he made that statement to law enforcement on October 24th of 2024, after law enforcement had just busted down his door at the Waldorf Astoria in Chicago, Illinois, when they are executing an arrest warrant to take him into custody that day. Law enforcement came into the suite that Kayvon Grant was staying in with his girlfriend, and they sat him down and they talked to him. And they talked to him on a recorded interview. And they started detailing the investigation that they had been through for some time. Since this incident you just heard about on August 19th of 2022. And they detailed this to him and told him that they had gone through the investigation, and their conclusion as a result of that was that Kayvon Grant was in charge, that he was the leader. They said, "You are looking at the rest of your life in prison. This is a murder. So we are going to believe that you are the leader until you tell us someone else was." You just heard from the government that this case was a case about revenge. And that is absolutely true. We agree on that. This is a case about revenge. This is a case about relationships. All of that is true. But the relationships go back further than what the government wants you to believe. They don't go back a few years. They go back decades. They go back to familial relationships in Chicago, Illinois, between two fathers who passed that relationship on to their two sons. And their two sons have names that are remarkably similar: Davon and Kayvon. Davon Bennett, as you've heard referred to as King Von, and Kayvon Grant. Their two daddies went back decades. They were extremely close. And you will hear that Kayvon Grant had some nicknames. People called him Vonnie, but people also called him Cuz. You can see Kayvon Grant and King Von, Davon Bennett. And Kayvon Grant got the nickname Cuz because of his relationship with King Von, because they were cousins. His entire identity stemmed from the fact that he had this close relationship with King Von. And it wasn't just when they were kids. So King Von was a Chicago guy, but at some point he moved to Atlanta, and when he moved to Atlanta, he moved in with his cousin, with Kayvon. They started working together, and Kayvon started managing kind of the day-to-day business of King Von, and King Von was growing in the music industry. He was becoming more well-known. He was becoming a popular musical artist. And so Kayvon had taken upon himself to manage him, to do the day-to-day. But even more than that, he managed his finances. They lived together for some period of time. They even had shared bank accounts. Kayvon and Davon, King Von and Cuz and Vonnie were two. As close as two men could possibly be. They were tight, they were thick, and you will hear that King Von's stardom, it was rising, and that the tragedy struck on November 6th of 2020 in Atlanta, Georgia, outside of a hookah lounge, kind of after hours, that Kayvon Grant, the Cuz, was there that night with King Von. He was at the hookah lounge with some other people the night that King Von was killed. That it started out as just kind of a fist fight between King Von and Quando Rondo. You heard about his name from the government in their opening statement, that there was a fist fight between these two men and other people got involved. It turned into a shootout, and King Von was shot, and he was shot in the street. And it was Vonnie, it was Cuz that was there, that had to frantically run and get his car. He was driving a Dodge Hellcat. He drove up the Hellcat and pulled alongside where King Von was bleeding out in the street. That someone had to pick King Von up and place him in the back seat of that car, and that Vonnie had to drive off frantically, trying to get his cousin to the hospital. He was the driver that night. And as he drove as fast as he could to Grady Memorial in Atlanta, his cousin, that he's tight as can be, was bleeding out in the back of his car. And King Von told Vonnie, he told Cuz, he said, quote unquote, "Why did you let me get shot? Why didn't you do something?" So Cuz drove to Grady Memorial. They dropped off King Von, And he was hoping, he was praying that he was going to be okay. And actually, they had one more conversation. They had one more conversation over the phone in which Bunny was able to tell King Von that I love you. But unfortunately, King Von didn't make it. He died. And that had a substantial impact on Kayvon, on Cuz. It was not only just a personal impact, obviously a traumatic impact. He was there the night that his cousin died. He was unable to get him there to the hospital fast enough to save him. But it also was an identity impact. His whole identity was tied up in the fact that he was King Von's guy. He was Cuz. He was the guy that could get things done for him. He was left floundering. And you will hear that the night that King Von died, it did have a big impact. And not just on Vonnie. King Von was a beloved musical artist. The whole nation mourned him. He had a lot of fans. There were celebrities posting tributes to him, things like that. But yes, absolutely, Durk Banks also was impacted. And you heard a little about Durk Banks. I'm going to tell you a little bit more. He's a 33-year-old man from Chicago, Illinois. He gained success in the music industry, but he's more than that. He's married. He has children, and he was a public face. And he was the public face of that connection with King Von. But it wasn't just Durk Banks that was impacted that night. The whole community around Chicago was impacted. Lots of folks felt the loss of King Von. And you will see that. You will see text messages from other folks indicating they felt that loss. They felt that trauma, particularly Kayvon Grant. So Vonnie, he was left floundering. What is he going to do now? He saw an opportunity. He saw that Durk Banks was upset. And he was upset. And you will see some of those messages that he lost somebody who was close to him. He was frustrated. He was angry. He was expressing himself. Part of Durk Banks' appeal is that he's a vulnerable man. He made expressing emotions and feelings acceptable. And he lived what he did out in public. His private messages also expressed those feelings of pain and hurt that another young man was killed before his time. You will see that. He will express those emotions. But he was not the only one. But what he did was he took those feelings and he channeled them. He channeled them into what he knew to do best, which was make music. And you heard that the government just said this is not a case about music. And we absolutely agree. But the government is going to present you with songs and with lyrics and try to say that that is some sort of expression of some sort of hatred in Mr. Banks. But that is not true. That was a channeling of his emotions through his artwork, and that it was really an expression of the way the community around him felt. The government will say that Mr. Banks has a nickname. They call him Blood. You will see some of the text messages. They refer to him as Blood. And that is really kind of an exaggeration because the term blood is used back and forth amongst many people in that community. It's like brother or bro. You will see individuals referring to each other as blood back and forth. That is not really his nickname. Mr. Banks had another nickname. They called him the Voice. And that stemmed from being the voice of the people, the voice of the community, of the trenches, of the folks who were downtrodden. But he was known for that. He was known for making his music express those feelings of the people around him, not just himself. The feelings of hurt because Mr. Banks knew how that felt. He grew up with nothing and he channeled that into his music. And yes, he was that public face. The nation was mourning King Von, and you will see that there was some pressure, if you could say, some reaction from the public to see him do something or say something. And you will see some messages. And this was a trolling campaign. People trying to just get under people's skin that said things like, slide for Von. Like there would be a social media post and people would just flood it with things with these slide for Von comments. It was trolling. Mr. Banks acknowledged that he understood that was trolling. And the reason that was directed towards him was because he was the public face. There was all of these other people in the community feeling that loss. But there was no way for the public to channel that towards anyone else. He just happened to be the one that they could channel it to. The government will claim that Mr. Banks is some sort of leader. You heard about this OTF, Only the Family. And absolutely, he had a music label called Only the Family. And he had artists signed to that label, and it was a successful label. But that is what he was the leader of. When they claim that there is some sort of control or leadership of other people, you will see that that actually is the opposite in the evidence. The people didn't really listen to him. Like if he expressed something, they would ignore him, that they disrespected him, and that many of them even stole from him. That is the opposite of the way you would treat a leader. But he did give people opportunities, absolutely. He came from nothing, and he wanted to build people up around him. He kept people near him. You will see that some of the folks in this case were people that he did grow up with, absolutely. He wanted to make sure that people he was with, he gets success, they got success too. But it wasn't as a leader of some sort of criminal group. This was helping the folks around him. And you will hear a lot about the events of August 19th of 2022. And honestly, on behalf of Mr. Banks, we agree. We agree that it was a tragedy. We agree that it was a tragedy that Saviay'a Robinson was killed that day. Mr. Banks had nothing to do with it. He was not there. He was not connected to it. And so there would be very little fight on behalf of Mr. Banks regarding any of the events that happened on August 19th of 2022. The government made some sort of claim about Mr. Banks waiting for a call that day. Like he wasn't there, but he was waiting for a call. And you will probably hear some testimony from cooperators that say something to that effect. But there is no corroboration of that. The case will break down into kind of three different categories of evidence. One being law enforcement witnesses, and those guys have no personal knowledge of anything. For the most part, these law enforcement witnesses will take the stand and they will just bring in things like text messages and social media. And you saw some of those things in the government's opening statement without context. You will see a lot of the context around those statements, those text messages actually are completely contrary to what the government will want you to believe. They have no other information that they can bring. No witnesses, no lay witnesses, Nobody can add to the context and say, yes, this was me. I was on this text message and this is what we were saying. That doesn't exist. They will want you to take these messages and interpret them without witnesses and without context. For example, you saw the text message from the government's opening statement from Mr. Banks that said, don't book no flights under my names associated with me, under any names associated with me. And you will hear that the context of that is very different. It had nothing to do with the flights being booked for other people on August 18th of 2022. That it wouldn't even make sense that it did, because he says, don't book no flights. And then flights were booked anyway. It has to do with another event that Mr. Banks was supposed to go to. That is what he was talking about. That is when we say things are taken out of context. And you will hear from cooperators. The government talked about them. They want to call them cooperators because these guys aren't really cooperative, right? These guys are beholden to the government. You've heard they pleaded guilty to murder, that the only way out of jail for any day in their life is to testify. And it's to testify against these individuals, particularly Mr. Banks. And those will be the only witnesses outside of law enforcement. You will hear from a man named Jerome Casey Hester, Jam. And the government was honest when they gave their opening statement. They said, this guy is a killer. True, absolutely. But he's also desperate. You will hear that he was in prison for most of his entire adult life. For about 12 years, this guy was in prison. And that, yes, absolutely, Mr. Banks did help him out. He put some money on his books when he was in prison. They came from the same place. He does help people out who are downtrodden. And people who are in prison are about as downtrodden as you can be. So he put a little money on his books, and he got him some opportunities when he got out, because reentry is important to him, reentry into society. And you will hear Jam testify that he was out for only a short period of time, from about February of 22 to May of 2023. That is it. And that the day he got locked up in May of 2023, he started cooperating because he was desperate. He couldn't go back to jail another day in his life. And he became a massive cooperator. He has been interviewed by law enforcement for more than 30 times, but only a couple of those were actually recorded. And he will testify that he came out on August the 19th of 2022, and he didn't even really know why he was going there. He didn't care. The government will talk about, and they talked about it in their opening statement, about reward. He will say he had no idea about any sort of reward that day. There was no direction, and he will testify that the majority of his interactions were with Kayvon Grant, who was present. You will also hear from another cooperator, Keith Jones. And you heard about him. He has almost no connection to Durk Banks. And you will hear that when he was first interviewed by law enforcement for more than 5 hours on a recorded statement, he never mentioned Durk Banks, no matter how hard he was pressed. Those agents pushed into him, and told him how serious this was, how he's looking at the rest of his life in prison. And this is recorded. And not once during that 5 hours of pressing and promising and pressing and promising did the guy ever mention Durk Banks. It wasn't until another interview, which was not recorded, that he decided to fold in and give the government what they wanted. And he has no connection to Durk Banks, but actually he does have a connection to somebody else. Keith Jones had a connection to Casey Hester, to Jam. They actually went back. These ties that run deep. As we talked about before, those two men went back to juvie, to juvenile hall together. That is how deep those two had a connection, Jam and Keith Jones. And you will hear from Kayvon Grant, and he will testify for the government. He will testify that he was the guy that, was Durk Banks' personal assistant, as he says. But that is really not true. That is a misnomer. He's tried to minimize his own involvement. He did much more than that. This guy had ties to the criminal underworld. The government just told you that was true. This guy had the most ties to that world. He was the guy that did everything on August 19th of 2022. He's the guy that booked the hotel for the individuals. He's the guy that secured the cars. You heard that one of the cars was a rental car. He rented that car. You will hear that the other car was a stolen car. He secured that stolen car. And on the rental car, he secured a fake tag that was put on that rental car. That he got the hotel, that he went to REI, the store, and bought ski masks for all the individuals, that he arranged for the Sprinter van to take them from San Diego to Los Angeles, that he accompanied them on August 18th and accompanied them again on August 19th. Kayvon Grant was there for all of this. He did all of this. But that wasn't the first time that he did that. You heard the government say that there was another incident in Georgia on May 2nd of 2021 in a small town kind of close to Savannah called Blackshear, Georgia, in southern Georgia, that Kayvon Grant arranged that too. This was a concert that Quando Rondo was performing, and that Kayvon Grant secured the cars, secured the guns, secured the people. He did all of this in May of 2021. And thankfully, they were unsuccessful. Nobody was hurt, but this was his MO. This was Kayvon Grant's MO. The gas station, it was a shooting at a gas station with stolen cars and guns. That was Kayvon Grant that arranged it. And he did it again in August of 2022. Now, he will claim that some of these things were paid for on a company called Astronaut Sounds credit card. And Astronaut Sounds is a company that is associated with Durk Banks. That is true. But Kayvon Grant, as working for that company, had access to these credit cards, that he was the one who used the credit card. This was not unusual for him to be able to access that money. And when he was asked on October 24th of 2024, tell us about who is behind this, a light bulb went off in his head. He responds, well, whose credit card was used? That is what he tells law enforcement. Whose credit card was used? And he knew. He knew he used that credit card. But he also knew that Durk Banks had a public face, that they really wanted to know about a big fish. They were pressing him about a big fish. And he thought, oh man, I got an insurance policy. I got a big fish I can give them so they won't look at all of these things that I did. And you will hear that on October 24th of 2024, Mr. Banks did try to leave town. He did book flights. That is true. But it was a place that he had gone many times before. He's a performer, and that he went there to a place where he would feel comfortable because he knew there was stuff going down. I mean, that is just true. These are people who these are people he knew. He heard about these things going on. And he is a public face. He's not going to get away. People know who he is, and he was just trying to get some space. That happened, but it was just for purposes of giving him space. There were no charges against him at that time. And we expect you will see some of these photos from music videos and podcasts about Durk Banks during the course of this trial in the effort to show that he had some sort of thought process or motive. But this is art, this is performance, this is what he did for a living. But this was reality. On the left, that is the scene from the shooting on November 6th of 2020 in Atlanta, Georgia. That is Kayvon Grant driving up in that black Hellcat. On the right, that is the shooting in Blackshear, Georgia on May 2nd of 2021, a drive-by at a gas station. And on the bottom, August 19th of 2022 in Los Angeles. And there is one common denominator for all three of those incidents. Kayvon Grant was at number 1, Kayvon Grant was at number 2, and Kayvon Grant was at number 3. You heard the charges in this case. This is allegations of stalking and of murder for hire. As far as the stalking goes, it's absolutely clear that Durk Banks had nothing to do with that. He wasn't there. He was living in Chino. You saw the house. He was living there. He wasn't there temporarily. That is where he was living with his wife and his children. He was working out of Los Angeles because he's a performer. And you will hear that on August 18th, Mr. Banks was in Miami, Florida, that he was there to record a music video with DJ Khaled, a very prominent music producer in the industry. Mr. Banks had a lot of other stuff going on in his life at that time. He had responsibilities and engagements, and he was not sitting around waiting for a phone call. This is also an allegation of murder for hire. For hire, payment. If you want to follow the money as evidence in this trial, you are not going to be able to because there is no money to follow. There is not going to be any evidence of direction, of instruction, of promise, of assurance, no payment, and no bounty. Nobody gets paid. There is a murder for hire allegation where nobody gets paid. Mr. Banks is a performer. He's won a Grammy, but there is one individual who has been practicing to take the stand for a long time. He's practicing his performance. He's hoping he gets an Oscar. Mr. Banks is a performer. He is a celebrity. But as he sits here today, he's a 33-year-old man in a very, very serious situation. This is not a performance. This is not a show. This is reality. And I know you as jurors will take your job extremely seriously. And you will listen to all of the evidence in this case, and you will realize that there is no evidence. There is no evidence because that evidence against Mr. Banks doesn't exist. And I'm very confident that you will look through this and find Mr. Banks not guilty of all charges. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goldberg. Ladies and gentlemen, you may stand and stretch while Mr. Wilson's counsel get ready for his opening statement. All right, y'all. Let me just take a moment break for a second. Hold on.
Sylvia in that courtroom grind. All day long she's making time. Notes in hand, she's got the plan. Comes home late, shines like a star. Yeah, she's here to break it down. Justice found without a frown. In our chat with hearts so true, Sylvia's magic comes right through. Feel it, baby, feel the light. Soulful notes on the inside. Sylvia's truth makes us sway. All night long we groove and play. She's the queen with a golden touch. In her words we trust so much. Courtroom battles fade away. She brings the light in the day. Slide it slyly, can't deny. Sylvia knows just how to fly. All our walls she melts away, bringing soul to every day. Feel it, baby, feel the light. Soulful notes on the inside. Sylvia's truth makes us sway. All night long we groove and play.
All right, guys. Since it's two of us, you're going to hear our voice twice. All right. She's going to be the judge, and I'm going to be the defense attorney. All right. You ready?
Okay, Mr. Harbaugh, Mr. Mills, 22 minutes each.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Ladies and gentlemen, you may be seated.
Ma'am, you're not finished.
Mr. Harbaugh, you may begin when you are ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. My name is Greg Harbaugh. I am representing DeAndre Wilson. I, along with Christy McGon and my paralegal, are his defense team. This case is about a passenger. DeAndre Wilson was a passenger. Kayvon Grant was a predator. The evidence will show Mr. Wilson did not plan, did not prepare it, did not participate in this crime. Mr. Wilson went to Los Angeles to pursue his career in music. Mr. Grant went to LA to pursue his personal vendetta against Taquan Bowman and Quando Rondo. The evidence will show that Mr. Wilson had no idea about this plan before arriving to LA, that the plan had been in the works by Mr. Grant well before he arrived, and by that point, it was too late. Mr. Grant had the guns and had identified the people that he needed to carry out his vendetta. It had nothing to do with Mr. Wilson. So, all Mr. Wilson could do at that point was to not participate, to be a passenger in a car. Ladies and gentlemen, you're not going to hear much from me during this trial. But when I address the evidence, there's three main points I want to consider. First, Mr. Wilson did not know of this plan before getting to LA. Second, Mr. Wilson was not needed by Mr. Grant's plan. And third, Mr. Wilson did nothing to further Mr. Grant's plan. So, the first point, Mr. Wilson went to LA to pursue his musical career with OTF, not murder. Now, some of you may have heard, but obviously Mr. Wilson is not as famous as Mr. Banks. He, in 2021, had started his career to try to be an up-and-coming rapper. He identified with various ways as Didi, as his friend called him, Deesky, even The Threat. All rap branding. When you are trying to make it big in an international label, OTF, you go where the opportunities are. And that is what Mr. Wilson did. You will learn that Mr. Wilson would take whatever opportunity, whether it's studio time, whether it's a concert, whether it's to be present. Now, in the past year, before August 2022's trip, Mr. Wilson had traveled all over with the OTF label for music. He had gone to Atlanta, gone to New Orleans, Miami. If there was an opportunity, Mr. Wilson was there. And you also learned that Mr. Wilson, 5 months before, went to Los Angeles through OTF, all in pursuit of his music. Now, you are going to learn that the music industry, in particular, when you have such a successful label as OTF, things are done at the last minute. You go, jump on a flight, you go where the opportunity is. You don't pack a bag. You don't book a hotel. That is done for you. You don't go with the clothes on your back. You go with the clothes on your back. If you need it, you buy it when you get there. You need a ride from the airport? You don't get an Uber. A party bus picks you up. That is the life that Mr. Wilson was living and trying to develop his career. So, when he got on the plane in August 18th of 2022, he had been told about it for just a few hours before, which was standard. And when you travel for these opportunities, there is often an entourage. You invite friends, and that is what Mr. Wilson did. He invited Keith Jones and others to come. Now, what the government has identified as recruitment is simply recreation. It's forwarding identifying information through a text message for someone could board a flight. It's not recruitment. That is not recruitment. Now, the evidence will show that Mr. Wilson did not know Mr. Grant's plan before getting on that plane. Now, you heard extensively, and I'm going to shorten it because I don't want to repeat, but Mr. Grant had the motive, the means, and opportunity to carry out his vendetta for the death of King Von against Quando Rondo. He is engaged with a he is a sophisticated criminal engaged with an international car ring, has connection with cartel, has wealth and opportunity. He took his first opportunity in Blackshear, Georgia in May of 2021. He was unsuccessful. You will hear extensively from the government about what happened in Blackshear. What you won't hear is that Mr. Wilson had any role whatsoever in that attempt. He wasn't present, he didn't plan it, and he didn't participate, and he didn't pursue because Mr. Wilson had no vendetta against Quando Rondo. But Mr. Grant does. All of that. For the next opportunity that Mr. Grant saw was he learned that Quando Rondo was in Los Angeles. So he went on Instagram, found out where his hotel was, and he orchestrated the playbook that he did in Blackshear. He got the guns, a stolen car, got masks, and he set up everything. The only person he needed for that plan was Casey Hester Jam. Now, you will learn that even though Mr. Grant was relying on Mr. Hester did not know about that plan. Now, like Mr. Wilson, Mr. Hester was also with OTF and was trying to pursue his music career, his own music career. Like Mr. Wilson, Mr. Hester will also go on trips with OTS last minute. Jump on a plane, not knowing where he was going. Sometime it was a concert, sometime it was for security. And like Mr. Wilson, Mr. Hester got on a plane to LA, not knowing anything about Mr. Grant's plan. Now, before Mr. Hester cut a deal, I'm sorry, somebody send me a message. Now, Mr. Hester cut a deal before Mr. Hester got any benefits before he takes this. Before he was interviewed multiple times, he was recorded and he was asked repeatedly and said that he did not know before he got to LA that this was the plan. You will learn that Mr. Hester has met with the FBI continue to learn at upwards of over 30 times, including in some of the prosecutors here today who will make the decision as to what reduction in sentencing he will get. And the vast majority of those were counted in 3. Only 3 over 30 are actually recorded. But when he was recorded and didn't have a deal and didn't have these prosecutors involved, he said he didn't know. Now this brings us to the second point, which is Mr. Wilson was not needed for Mr. Grant's plan because even though Mr. Hester did not know about Mr. Grant's plan, Mr. Grant knew all about Mr. Hester's background. He knew he was a violent individual his entire life. When he's not, he's out of custody. He's robbing, shooting, murdering people. When he's in custody, he's beaten up. He's beaten them up. Mr. Grant was counting on Mr. Hester's violent background and knew Mr. Hester would be all too willing to help him carry out this plan. Now, when Mr. Wilson arrived, everything was normal. Was a standard OTF trip. He was picked up in a party bus They drove to LA. They take a view of LA skyline, but that's where it detoured. When they met up with Mr. Grant, they weren't met with music studio. They were met with machine guns and mask. You will learn that Mr. Hester and Mr. Jones went for those guns, picked them up, and the mask, not Mr. Wilson. And that may surprise you that Mr. Jones would do that, but it's not at all. And as was pointed out, Mr. Hester and Mr. Jones go way back to Juvie Hall. They were when they were in there together. They were beaten up, fellow inmates together. Their ties run deep. They were both fine with participating, but not Mr. Wilson. He is now in LA trapped with armed individuals. He is not at home. He doesn't have his own transportation. So he doesn't pick up a gun. He doesn't drive the stolen car. He becomes a passenger in the BMW. Now, and the other reason that we know Mr. Wilson was not needed by Mr. Grant's plan is what happened on the morning of the murder. On August 19, 2022, this is a very important time frame. That morning, Mr. Hester called Mr. Grant at 8:30 to pick him up from the hotel. Mr. Grant drives over, picks up Mr. Hester. He grabs Mr. Hester, and Mr. Hester grabs his gun and a mask. And the two head downtown where the hotel. I apologize. Let me make this clearer. So the hotel where Quando Rondo is at is downtown LA, and where the event initially takes place the following. But Mr. Wilson was staying up at the hotel in Universal Studio. And I apologize. I think I have inadvertently deleted. So these up is this far corner is where the Universal Hotel is. So they drive down to downtown LA to carry out their mission to attack Quando Rondo. And Mr. Wilson, who the government is going to claim that Mr. Wilson helped orchestrate and plan this, was at the hotel over 30 minutes away. They arrived downtown, Mr. Grant and Mr. Hester ready to carry out. Mr. Hester is eager to kill Quando Rondo, but Mr. Grant tells him to stop, to hold off. It's too risky. And Mr. Hester is angry. He's not only angry that he doesn't get to carry it out, he's angry that Mr. Wilson is all the way back at the hotel not participating. So Mr. Houston goes back, pick up Mr. Jones, Mr. Wilson, and Mr. Lindsay to bring them. Mr. Wilson again doesn't get a gun, doesn't get a mask, doesn't get into the vehicle where the shooters exits from. He gets into the passenger seat of the BMW. So, the final point is that Mr. Wilson did nothing to make Mr. Grant's plan happen. Mr. Grant was able to carry it out, his attacks, with Mr. Wilson having zero role. Mr. Grant planned, orchestrated, and funded the shooting. Mr. Hester and Mr. Jones shot Quando Rondo's SUV at the gas station and killed Mr. Robinson. Now, you're going to hear a lot of evidence about Instagram and text messages, and I want you to really focus on the timing because the government will not point to you a single text message, Instagram post, direct message where Mr. Wilson is talking about wanting to carry out revenge on Quando Rondo, having any animosity to him whatsoever. Now, I will point out retroactively things that they will claim is consciousness of guilt. And
Excuse me, Mr. Harbaugh, 5 minutes.
thank you. And they point out the in and out. And there is no question Mr. Wilson was at the in and out 45 minutes after these individuals had shot up the SUV, expending multiple rounds. There was nowhere for Mr. Wilson to go. So you will watch. You will see that Mr. Wilson acted as what you would expect anyone in those circumstances to act, as normal as possible. The government will present some videos and messages post this event to suggest that Mr. Wilson is admitting. And we welcome that opportunity to address that. But I ask you to wait and to look at the entirety, at the facts, and not the government's gloss. And in reality, Mr. Wilson didn't admit to a crime because he didn't commit a crime. At the end of this case, the evidence will show Mr. Wilson was a passenger. Mr. Wilson did not plan it. Mr. Wilson did not prepare it. And Mr. Wilson did not participate. And we ask you, when you review all the evidence, you will reach the only verdict, the only just verdict, which is not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harbaugh. Again, ladies and gentlemen, here in the court, you may stand and stretch while counsel for Mr. Lindsay prepares for his opening statement.
You may begin. Mr. Mills, you may begin. You ready?
I'm ready. Appreciate it. May I proceed, Judge?
You may, Mr. Mills.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, good morning. My name is Tillett Mills, and I represent David Lindsay. So there is one cold, hard, and inarguable fact that will come out of this trial. On August 19th, 2022, a man was shot and killed at a gas station in Los Angeles. Now, you all are going to see that. And nothing I say to you is meant to soften it or gloss over it, because it was truly a tragedy. But see, the thing you all have to understand is that my client, David, is not on trial for whether that happened. He's on trial for whether he agreed to it, whether he knew it was coming, and whether he was promised or paid a single thing for it. So as we go through this trial, that is what I want each and every one of you all to keep your eyes on. Now, the judge is going to give you the law at the end of this case, and the law is his to give, not mine. My job this morning is the evidence, and the government has made accusations that they have to prove now. So you see, the evidence in this case is going to come to you in two forms, right? And I want you to hold on to this. There is records, right? Phone records, airline records, and bank and cash app records, the surveillance video. They are all made back in 2022 by companies that don't have a side in this courtroom. You see, United Airlines doesn't care who wins this case. T-Mobile doesn't care who wins this case. And each bank doesn't care who wins this case either. Those are the records. And then there is a story, right? Told by three men who were arrested, facing serious federal time cooperating in the hopes that they can avoid a life sentence and get some of their time shaved off their sentence. So the interesting thing is the same government that is prosecuting them decides whether that happens. So when it comes to David, the records say one thing and the story says another. So your job throughout the duration of this trial is which one you are going to believe. So the government showed you all a presentation and you watched it. Photographs, quotes, timelines, a production. If you haven't noticed, I didn't bring one because a plane ticket doesn't need animation. A phone bill doesn't need a soundtrack. And bank records don't need color schemes. Those records were made back in 2022 by companies with no side in this courtroom. That presentation was made for this trial by people that needed to win it. So their case comes to you on screens. My client's case comes to you on paper, their paper. As we go through this trial, watch that difference hold up from the first witness to the last. So let me tell you what the records show about my client, David. On August 18th, 2022, he got on a commercial flight from Chicago to San Diego under his own name, under a ticket somebody else bought with somebody else's credit card, somebody else's email, and a contact phone number that was not his. No alias, no fake name. And when the trip was over, he flew home the exact same way. Commercial, under his own name, booked by somebody else on the same card with a different phone number. He flew commercial in his own name, passed the ID checks, the airport cameras, both directions. So when the government calls this trip an operation or something that needs to be concealed, look at the paper it left behind. This is not a man trying to hide. You see his face on the gate at both directions. And if flying United under your own name is covered, it is the only cover in history that gives the government a permanent record of exactly who you are, where you sat, and where you landed. That is not covered. That is a paper trail. So let's get something out of the way right now. David was in California those 2 days. I'm not going to sit here with you all and pretend otherwise. The records put him there, and the records are true. He flew out and he flew home. But listen to what the government is actually accusing him of. An agreement. That he agreed to kill a man. That he knew what was coming. That he was hired to do it. Being in California isn't evidence of those 3 things. So watch all trial long for the evidence of that agreement, because that is their accusation and that is what they have to prove. But notice what the government just did in their opening statement. David was picked because nobody knew him. The beef wasn't his, so follow that logic. The fewer calls on the phone, the better it is, because it fits. But there is no calls to the man that arranged the rooms, the guns, the cars, no message about money. It fits. So you have to think that the theory that gets stronger as the evidence gets thinner is not evidence. It is a way for them having to not show you any evidence. So now watch what his phone does, because the government pulled phone records for everybody in this case, including David. The FBI chart the contact between the phones analyzed across both days, and that chart will be in evidence. Look at the 2 days that this case is about when they presented. On those 2 days, my client, David's phone, touched one phone. One. Not an organizer, not someone who booked the cars and the rooms, not one of the phones that they say was doing the following, and not one message about a plan, a person, a route, or a payment to anybody. The rest of the time, his phone was doing what it does every other day, talking to the same people it normally talks to. So watch their chart when it comes in and watch how little of it has to do with David Lindsay. Now, remember, I already told you David was in California. That is not the point. The point is that their tracking case ran on phones. So when their analyst puts the charts on the screen, watch what David's phone is actually doing on them and watch what it's not. Now, the government chose the words in this case, and they chose how they charged this case: murder for hire. Their charge, their words: a killing in exchange for money, for something of value, promised or paid. Now, they went looking for it: Apple Cash, Cash App, bank records, car records. And listen to what none of it's going to show. Not one payment to my client before August 19th, and not one payment after August 19th. And you heard the government soften the word, the motive for this murder that occurred. So if hire becomes mixed motives, just hold on to the words that they chose. A hire is not a mood. It's not. It's a deal. It's something of value. It's promised before. And the judge will instruct you on that, because mixed motives do not fill an empty deal. So where is the money? Where is the price? Where is the hire in this murder for hire? Hold them to their own words as we continue to go through this trial. And if the motive is not there, listen for their fallback. Opportunity, music opportunities, placement in music videos. David doesn't rap. David doesn't have a song. David doesn't have a video or a placement, not before August 19th and not after. I mean, what relevance is that going to have to him? What opportunity would he be provided? So you might ask if the records are all silent. Where does the story about my client David come from? It comes from three men, three narrators. They took part in the events of those 2 days, and each of those men were arrested, and each of them are facing serious federal time. Each one cooperating, as we said, in hopes of a lighter sentence, a sentence that the judge cannot give them unless those prosecutors stand up and they ask for it. The evidence will show you the machinery, session after session with the government, agents taking notes. And for most of those sessions, no recordings. But the thing that is going to carry this is that listen to how well each of those men actually knew David. The first sat down with the FBI the night he was arrested and could not give them David's name at all. To them, David was the man who came with Flocka. The second one didn't know David before Los Angeles, was never even introduced to him, and told the agents that the two of them never spoke about anyone getting paid. And the third has known David for a while. He drove him to the airport. But listen to how each of these three men tell you what David supposedly knew. Listen to their words. They say they believed, they understood. Looking back, it might have been clear. That is not how a man talks about something that he saw. That is how a man talks when he's filling in a blank. When each of them take that stand, I want you all to remember two questions. What does this witness actually know about David from his own knowledge? And second, what is it worth to them to say it? Ladies and gentlemen, there are three men on trial in this courtroom, and each man's case will be decided on the evidence about him. Over the next few weeks, you're going to hear music, you're going to hear about fame, you're going to hear about record labels, you're going to hear about beef, years of history from other people. But what you're going to also hear is that David isn't involved in any of that. When that evidence comes in, listen to whose name is not in it. David didn't write any lyrics. As I said, David is not in any music videos. None of the messages are his. So we ask that you keep a separate scorecard for David and do not fill out his scorecard versus someone else's. And watch their cameras all trial long. They show his face at the gate, the airport, both directions. His face in the restaurant. His face everywhere they can actually see him. But you notice the one picture where they do not show a face at all is the one picture where they need you to actually believe it's him. So let me tell you what the records in this trial will not show. And hold me to every word. At the end of this case, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to remind you of that. The records will not show one fingerprint of David's on anything that matters. Not his DNA, not his name on the rental agreement, not on the charter manifest, not a single message about planning, payment, or stalking. Not one text, not one DM, not one call in which David plans, tracks, agrees to anything, or gets paid. Now, the government knows all that. They are going to put a man on the stand to say what no record says, that David agreed. Not a document, not a record, a man. He has admitted his own part about what happened at the gas station. He's pled guilty. He has not been sentenced. And the people who grade his testimony are sitting right there. And they will be sitting at that table during the whole trial. So when he points at David, listen to every word and then think about what he has on the line. And when a cooperating witness gets on that stand to talk about my client David, do one thing for me. Wait for the record that backs them up. Wait for the text. Wait for the ledger. Wait for the wire transfer. Wait for the bag full of cash that is going to be given to David. And watch how long you wait because you won't see a single thing. And remember what you saw in the openings. The government brought you a presentation. I brought you the records. And I want you to keep that with you for 3 weeks. But what I say isn't evidence. What the government says isn't evidence. The evidence comes from that witness stand, the exhibits that are going to be presented, and facts that both sides agree to, from nowhere else. So when the government presents their first witness, I want you to listen. I want you to pay attention. And I want you to decide what they are presenting has to do with David Lindsay. And at the end of all of it, I want you to consider everything that is presented. And I want you to vote my client not guilty on all counts. And I thank you in advance for your time and decisions in making this.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Ladies and gentlemen, we will take our morning break now. These breaks, as the trial goes forward, will be 20 minutes. Today, I'll make it 25 because it's your first break and there is some housekeeping matters I want to take up with the lawyers. Remember what I told you on Friday, and I'm going to be repeating it throughout this trial. Do not discuss this case even amongst yourselves. If the jury room, in the jury room, you can talk about anything but this case to all those who are participating. And do not allow anyone to speak with you. And certainly, I know you have computers in your pockets. It would be the easiest thing in the world to do. I'm telling you, once again, do not do it. Don't do it anything. Don't do anything to research this case. We will start again at 10:55. Thank you. All right, guys, we are done with opening arguments. We will start with the witness testimony on tomorrow because it is our 2-hour mark. We do not plan to stay with you more than 2 hours each night as we do the transcript reading, so you can know exactly what went on. Thank you, Court and Ms. Goldberg. I appreciate you.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you guys have a great night. And remember, I'm going to retitle this as the opening for day 1. All right. So anybody wants to go back and hear what happened in the courtroom, you can listen to this presentation. Don't forget to share. Hit the like, share, and subscribe. My ex-folks, you guys going to have to come over to YouTube to finish listening to what happened in court. We're going to be always behind the court, so you'll get to hear exactly what happens. And I told you there are some bloggers that are out there who given their view of what's going on in court, but here we are actually reading what is going on in the courtroom. No personal feelings, just actual facts of what happened. So you guys have a great night. God bless you. And don't forget to support this channel. These are the ways that you can support this channel: by Cash App, PayPal, Zelle, Venmo, Apple Pay. And is greatly appreciated. And tomorrow morning, don't forget, I will be at Cecil's courthouse. Those who have been following me, Cecil's case, tomorrow I will be there in the morning for his final hearing before trial. Trial is next week for Cecil McCrary. All right. Good night, everybody. I love you. May the Lord watch between me and thee while we're absent one from another. Have a great night. Love y'all. Bye.
Thank you for watching the infamous Sylvia channel, where laughter and fun make up our panel. Together we build this digital spree. We appreciate you and our growing family. With mods by our side and chat flowing free in this online space. It's just you and me. We laugh until tears roll down like the rain. In this virtual world, you ease all my pains. We're family, not just a show. Every click and comment makes us grow. Mods and chat, keeping the vibe so right. Together we shine like stars in the night. We cherish the moments, the highs and lows, from the latest gossip to stories untold. You're more than a viewer, you're part of the crew in this space of ours. It's all because of you. This digital world where emotion is shared, every post and reaction showing we care. The love is real in this virtual domain. just to show every click and comment makes us grow. Mars in check, keeping the vibe so right. Together we shine like stars in the night. We're a family, not just to show every click and comment makes us grow. Mars in check, keeping the vibe so right. Together we shine like stars in the night. This digital world where emotion is shared, every post and reaction showing we care. The love is real in this virtual domain. With every sign and joy is what we'll gain. We're a family, not just to show every click and comment